Welcome to Rex. In this video, we'll be learning about how to use Rex to create a scatter plot. A scatter plot uses dots to show the relationship between two numeric variables. The position of each dot on the horizontal and vertical axes indicates values for an individual data point. Let's first take a look at our data. Today we are using the Fisher's iris dataset, which is a classic in the field of statistics. The iris dataset contains 4 features: the sepal length, the sepal width, the petal length, and the petal width, for 50 samples each of 3 different iris species. Let's say we want to create a scatter plot that visualizes the relationship between the sepal and petal lengths. In order to do so, we go to Graphics and click Scatter Plot. We'll first be using this Variable tab to select the variables to plot on the X and Y axes, and to define the grouping variables. As we can see, the headings in the first row of the Excel datasheet are displayed under All Variables. We can use the arrow buttons to add or remove variables from each option. Let's first create a scatter plot that shows the relationship between sepal and petal lengths for the entire dataset. In order to do so, we will select sepal length as the x-axis variable and petal length as the y-axis variable. Now we can click OK. In this scatter plot, we can see the relationship between the sepal and petal lengths. Generally, we see a positive relationship between an iris's sepal length and its petal length for sepal lengths between 5 and 8 centimeters. However, we can also see a cluster of data points between 4 and 6 centimeter sepal lengths, where the petal length remains under 2 centimeters. Now that we have a good idea about how our two variables are related for the entire dataset, let's make a scatter plot that shows the sepal and petal lengths for each species. In order to do so, we go back to Graphics and Scatter Plot. As we can see, the settings we made for our last scatter plot are saved. We will keep sepal length as our x-axis variable and petal length as our y-axis variable. Now, we will add species as our grouping variable. Finally, let's click OK. In this scatter plot, we can see that each iris species is plotted in a different color. For example, the Setosa species is shown in red. Using this scatter plot, we are able to compare the distribution of sepal and petal lengths between each species. For example, we can see that the data points for each species tend to be clustered together within a certain range. Here, we see that the Setosa iris species has a cluster with the smallest sepal and petal lengths. In Rex, we also have the option to add a little random noise to the data, also known as jittering. This way, we can see each cluster more clearly by separating repeated data points that overlap with each other. In order to do so, we go back to Graphics and Scatter Plot. We will keep the variable settings we made for our last plot, and now we will go to the Output tab. We can use this tab to customize many parts of our graph, such as changing the graph style, adding marginal plots, customizing the legend, and more. In order to add jittering, we will go to the Graph Properties section and set the degree of jitter as 10% for both the X and Y axis. Let's also try customizing our legend. First, let's change the position of our legend so that it is displayed inside the plot. Now, we will set the exact position as 90% for the x-axis and 10% for the y-axis. This will set the legend in the bottom right of our scatter plot. Next, let's select Border to add a legend border. Finally, let's click OK. Now we are able to see more data points in our scatter plot, as well as our custom legend. In our next plot, let's try customizing the points for each species and adding a 95% confidence ellipse to display the 2D distribution of our variables. In order to do so, we'll go back to Graphics, Scatter Plot. We will keep all the variable settings and go to the Output tab. Under Add Line, we will choose Normal Data Ellipse. Next, we will go to the Elements section to customize the size, shape, and colors for our points. As we can see, the species is displayed in the combo box. For Setosa, we will set the point shape as a square and the color as orange. For Versicolor, we will set the point shape as a triangle with the thicker outline width of 1 and the color as blue. Lastly, for Virginica, we will set the point shape as an X and the color as purple. Under the Elements section, we can also customize the color of our ellipse. Today, let's make our ellipse pink. Now we can click OK. As we can see, the scatter plot now contains our custom points and a 95% confidence ellipse. In our final scatter plot, we will use Rex to add a reference point and line to our graph, as well as to customize the graph and axis titles. Let's first go to Graphics and Scatter Plot. Note that I've already reset it to the default options. We will put sepal length as our x-axis variable, petal length as our y-axis variable, and species as our grouping variable. And now we will go to the Add Elements tab. We can use this tab to add points and straight lines to our graphs, and we can customize the point shape, line type, position, color, and width. Let's say we found an iris with a sepal length of 7 cm and a petal length of 6.5 cm. We want to predict which of the 3 species this iris may be. To do so, we can add a point with a square shape at the coordinate 7, 6.5. Let's make the outline width a little thicker as 1 and the color of the point as purple. We now click the arrow button to add our point to the plot. Let's say we also want to add a reference line that indicates a petal length of 2.5 cm. To do so, we will add a horizontal line and set the y-intercept as 2.5. Next, let's make it a thick dotted line by setting the width as 1 and selecting the dotted style. Lastly, let's set the color of our line today as pink. We will now click the arrow button to add the line to our plot. Finally, when we go to the Miscellaneous tab, we can choose our graph and axis titles, and we can customize and label certain axis values. Under Text Labels and Graph Title, let's name our graph as Test. Next, let's name our x-axis as SL for sepal length and our y-axis as PL for petal length. With this, we are done customizing our graph, so we now click OK. Now, in this scatter plot, we can see the graph and axes titles that we made, as well as our pink reference line. We can also see the point that we added, and given the coordinates of this point, we may predict that the iris we found is of the Virginica species. Overall, as we have seen in this video, we can use Rex to create and customize scatter plots. Thank you for watching today's video in Graphics in Rex Pro. Don't forget to like and subscribe to RexSoft's YouTube channel for more informational videos on statistics, data, and how to use Rex.